Welcome to my channel Elaine Signal. The first time they shot her, it was supposed to be routine. No one in observation room B even flinched. Dr. Elias Varn stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring through the reinforced glass into the sterile white chamber below. Inside, the trainee, subject L17, though she still insisted on being called Mira, stood calmly in the center of the floor, her bare feet aligned with the faint circular markings that pulsed beneath her. "Ready," came a voice over the intercom. Mira looked up, directly at the glass. Even from that distance, her eyes seemed too aware, too present. "Ready," she said. Elias hesitated, just for a second. Then he nodded. The shot rang out, clean, efficient, clinical. A single pulse round, designed to stop the heart instantly without damaging surrounding tissue. Mira collapsed. Flat. Gone. A technician beside Elias checked the monitor. No heartbeat. Neural activity 0. Time of death confirmed. Elias exhaled slowly. Begin countdown. A timer appeared on the central screen. 0:23. The room fell silent. This was the part no one truly understood. At 0:18, Myra's fingers twitched. At 0:12, a faint electrical signal flickered across her brain scan. At 0:07, her chest rose sharply, like a body gasping after drowning. At 0:03, the overhead lights dimmed, just slightly. Enough for everyone to notice. At 0:100, Mira sat up. Alive, not gasping, not confused, just awake. The technicians exchanged uneasy glances. One of them whispered, "Every time, it's exactly the same." Mira slowly stood, her movements smooth, deliberate. There was dried blood staining her uniform, but the wound itself, center mass, was gone. No scar, no trace. She tilted her head and looked up at the observation glass again. And smiled. The beginning of the anomaly. Mira had arrived at Facility Orpheus 6 months earlier. She was the youngest recruit they had ever accepted into the temporal reversion program, a classified initiative built on a theory most scientists had dismissed as impossible. That time, under certain conditions, could be locally reversed for a single biological entity. Not rewound universally, not altered globally, but reset. Only for one person, only for a very short window, and only after death. They called it the 23-second threshold. No one knew why it was exactly 23 seconds. Not 22, not 24. Every test subject before Mira had failed. Some never came back. Others returned, wrong. Fragments of memory missing, personalities distorted. In one case, the subject reanimated without higher brain function at all, alive, technically, but hollow. Mira was different. She came back whole, every time, and more disturbingly, she remembered everything. The middle, cracks in reality. By the 12th test, the facility staff had stopped treating the process as purely scientific. Because Mira wasn't just surviving. She was learning. "You hesitated again," she said one day, sitting across from Dr. Elias in the interview room. Elias frowned. "I did not. You did. 0.4 seconds longer than last time." She leaned forward slightly. "You're starting to doubt the program. That's not your concern. It should be," she replied calmly. "I'm the one dying." Elias stared at her. "And yet you don't seem bothered by it." Mira smiled faintly. "That's because I've realized something you haven't." "And what's that?" She tapped her temple. "I'm not just coming back." A pause. "I'm bringing something with me." At first, they thought it was psychological. Trauma responses, memory echoes, hallucinations caused by repeated death. But then the anomalies began. Small things. A pen rolling off a table, before anyone touched it. Monitors glitching exactly 23 seconds before a scheduled test. Security footage showing Mira standing in places she had never physically been. And then, the voices. Technician Raheen was the first to report it. "I heard her," he said, visibly shaken. "In the hallway." She said, "Don't open the door." "But Mira was in containment," Elias replied. Raheen nodded. "I know. That's what I'm saying. The next test was different." Elias insisted on changing the protocol. "2 shots," he ordered. The room went quiet. "That's not necessary," one of the senior scientists argued. "The data." "I'm not asking," Elias snapped. "I want to see what happens if we disrupt the pattern." Mira was informed before the test. She didn't argue, but as she stepped into the chamber, she said something that made Elias' blood run cold. "Don't do this one." Elias stiffened. "Why?" She looked up at him, her expression unusually serious. "Because this is the one where it changes." The first shot hit. Mira dropped instantly. The second followed less than a second later. Silence. "Time of death confirmed," the technician said. Elias swallowed. "Begin countdown." 0:23. The timer ticked down. At 0:18, nothing happened. At 0:12, no signal. At 0:07, still nothing. The room began to buzz with tension. "Did we lose her?" someone whispered. At 0:03, the lights flickered violently. Not dimmed, flickered. At 0:01, every monitor in the room went black. And then, at 0:00, Mira stood up, but not where she had fallen. She was standing directly in front of the observation glass. On their side, the shift. Screams erupted. Technicians stumbled backward. Security alarms blared. Elias froze. Mira stood just a few feet away from him, her body still marked with blood, but her eyes. Her eyes were different, deeper, older. "You broke it," she said softly. Elias could barely speak. "That's not possible." Mira tilted her head. "You think this place is bound by your version of possible." Security rushed in, weapons raised. "Stand down," Elias shouted. They hesitated. Mira stepped closer. "No more tests," she said. "That's not your decision," Elias replied, though his voice lacked conviction. Mira smiled sadly. "It was never yours either." The truth revealed. Over the next hours, reality itself began to unravel inside Facility Orpheus. Hallways looped back on themselves. Doors opened into rooms that shouldn't exist. People reported seeing themselves, moments ahead or behind in time. And at the center of it all, was Mira. "I told you," she said to Elias as they stood in the collapsing observation room. "I'm not just coming back." "What are you?" he demanded. She looked at him, not with anger, but with something like pity. "I'm the result." "Of what?" "Of every version of me that didn't make it." Elias frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does if time isn't a line," she replied. "But a stack." She stepped closer. "Every time you killed me, you didn't just reset me. You merged me." Elias' breath caught. "All those failed subjects," she continued. "They didn't disappear. They became part of the system. Part of me." The final countdown. The facility began to destabilize completely. Walls cracked, not physically, but visually, like a corrupted image. Time loops overlapped. In one corridor, Elias saw 3 versions of the same technician arguing with each other. In another, a door opened to reveal nothing but darkness. Mira stood at the center of it all, strangely calm. "This is the part where it ends," she said. Elias grabbed her arm. "You have to fix this." "I can't. Then we're all dead." Mira shook her head. "No." She looked at him one last time. "Just you." The ending. The final shot was never fired. Because there was no one left to fire it. The last thing drive Elias Varn saw was the timer. Floating in the air. 0:23. He didn't remember being shot. He didn't feel pain. Just stillness. Then, darkness. At 0:18, he heard a voice. At 0:12, he felt his heart try to beat. At 0:07, memories that weren't his flooded his mind. At 0:03, he realized the truth. At 0:100, Elias opened his eyes. He was standing in the chamber. Barefoot. A circular marking glowing beneath him. Above, behind reinforced glass, figures stared down. One of them stepped forward. It was Mira, but not the Mira he knew. This one wore a lab coat. Her expression was cold, professional, detached. Ready? She asked over the intercom. Elias tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Mira tilted her head slightly. And for just a fraction of a second, she smiled. Begin test, she said. The shot rang out, and somewhere, just beyond the edge of perception, the timer reset. 0:23. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories.